Yeah, dude. Well, that's what happened. That's what happened. That's what happened to Jimmy Cagney. He
Yep.
couldn't sing or dance till he was
Mhm.
5 years old. Then he met
Mhm.
that kid from Cincinnati who gave him a good right shiner.
Yep.
From then on, he was cursed with the gifts.
It's true. Check Wikipedia. Right there. Crystal clear, black and white. Folks, welcome to Werewolf Radar, the world's premier paranormal preparedness podcast. My name's Jordan Dahl.
I am Nate Balding.
And I am Roger Norquist.
Today's episode of Werewolf Radar is brought to you by the Monstroco Night Loafer. Soft, supple loafers with backwards-facing soles to mislead fairies, leprechauns, and other paranormal pursuers. Not for use with backwards feet. The Monstroco Night Loafer. What the fuck?
Nice. I've been looking
Yeah.
for some of these so I can trick the fairies that tried to
And
get
the
me when I go out
cops.
for my midnight snacks.
Now, a lot of cops are fae folk these days, and you would be able to mislead those of the police force that are trolls in disguise.
Yeah, I mean that's ideal, I think, right? I mean,
Yeah.
So what you're
Yeah.
saying is
I
that we
don't
could
need-
own
how
this
many
city.
trolls coming up
Yeah.
on my property?
We got some of these night loafers on. The thing is, it's a loafer, so you don't want to use these to rob the fairy queen's hoard of gold. You don't want a
Ooh.
big
Oh, sure.
you don't want a
Yeah.
big uh mission. These things that you don't want to get them wet, you don't want to walk in the snow with them. They only come up to the ankle. But if you got to go
Yeah.
down to the sidewalk, take out the trash, and you live in a neighborhood where, say, red caps want to step on you with their metal shoes and use your blood to make their hats redder, you could safely take the garbage out and confuse them, or just stuff around the house. You got to pop down to the store, and you'd like to do it without some sort of Steed Moag coming out of the fucking stream and stealing your eyelids for its necklace of eyelids. You can do that now with the Night Loafer from Monstroco. What the fuck?
Every product is better than the last from
Right?
Monstroco. That's what I
Yeah.
believe.
Unless, and it does say this,
It's part of the
unless
holy texts.
unless you already have backwards feet, in which case these are just going to make it look like you're moving forwards.
Well, it's not a bad gift, but may I go first?
I think you should.
I
The
want to
speaking
bring.
skull seems to be inching toward you.
Yeah, it moves on its own now. I gave it new batteries.
I gotta ask, have you been
Dragging
feeding it?
itself by its top lip,
Yeah,
the little fleshy part that remains.
boy. Sometimes I think we should get that lip removed.
Well, it likes it. It
wouldn't
took
be
it
able
from
to-
that guy.
Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be able to speak either. It would just be a silent skull.
I like how it kind of screams.
Yeah.
For this holiday season, though, I want to bring back an old tradition of telling ghost stories.
Ooh,
And I
there'll be
have-
happy meetings and spooky ghost stories.
Apparently, yeah, people were telling tons of ghost stories back in the day.
They loved it.
I mean, it's the right thing to do, man. It's nighttime at 3:30 p.m. for the
Yeah,
entire hemisphere.
yeah, it's dark out there. Much like the inside of your heart, Charles Dickens.
And I found from a book, I'm reading from a book that I bought. This is the first book that I bought in years. I didn't read anything during the pandemic. I said, I'm done with this.
Yeah. I mean, why read, honestly?
I got
going-
Pokemon, and I said, I'm a Pokemon trainer.
Yeah.
And you hunted that Gyarados 19 to death.
I did. So I bought for this segment, and I will continue this segment, I think, for all of December, 30
All right,
real
a whole
ghost
December
stories,
seg.
30 real Christmas ghost stories,
Ooh.
true life experiences with ghosts and spirits at Christmas time.
Okay. Fucking
It
hit
was
me.
written and collected by M.J. Wayland.
M. Night Shyamalan.
And you can find it in I just went to my library and I saw some of the other books I have.
Ooh.
I have A Brief History of Tank Girl.
I didn't know Junji Ito made so much porn.
Oh, yes. I have
Well, it depends on your definition of porn, but oh baby.
I have
Ooh, if you like a cat biting someone, you
I
got
have
it
A
there.
Brief History of Tank Girl, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books of captured by, gangbanged by, and namaste
God.
with Sasquatch.
Yes,
Amazing.
for people joining the show just now, we had a brief period where we got really obsessed with all of the various paranormal creatures with erotic fiction.
A brief period. Wait, is the period over? I'm still going.
No, the period has not. It's not ended. We're still within
Okay.
it. It's a time looped envelope.
Yep. The AP style book, and then a book entitled Duck in a Raincoat, a book about Columbo.
Good Lord.
I think you have one of the best collections out there. I would
For real.
stack that against any library.
I hope that when there's a nuclear world-ending holocaust, this is one of the few pieces of golden age material that is remaining. And they find it and they're like,
the SIM card that remains.
Who was Roger Norquist? And how did he protect the sacred texts?
Obviously, he was not that much of an individual and was just part of the general population. It seemed all the population wanted to fuck Bigfoot.
Who was Bigfoot? And why did he leave us?
So from this book, and for Christmas, I'm going to be reading ghost tales that are true life experiences. The first one I have is entitled The Misty Figure.
Okay. Got a good title already. That's pretty good.
Many years ago, journalist and television presenter Willie RWF Poole told a story about his first season as a master of the Dartmoor Foxhounds.
Oh.
Yeah, I know what those words mean all separately, but when you put them together like that, and I am confused.
Well, I believe he's the person who's in charge of taking care of the foxes used in the hunts at Dartmoor.
Oh.
What did you just say to me again? Once again.
So you know about fox hunting?
Barely.
Yeah, you get a horn, you're on you've got some dogs, you're on a horse, and you're after a fox.
Yeah, it was a thing that the aristocracy in the UK specifically used to do a lot, where it was like they wanted to go hunting, but they didn't really want to go hunting. So they just had a stable full of beagles and also a stable full of foxes, and they would release a fox. I think they would trap it first, and then they would release a fox, and then they would release the hounds, and then the king or the lord would trot along on his horse and be like, "There it is, I found it. Bring me the fox.
Yeah,
I would eat its delicious fox meat."
Oh.
And then when they got really bored, they just exchanged the fox for any peasant.
Yeah.
The most dangerous game.
Yeah. And I'm sure I've gotten some of that backwards.
A weak peasant.
Willie RWF Poole was a master. And during his first season, apparently, at the Dartmoor Foxhounds, on Christmas Eve, the hunt met at a pub on the edge of the moor. The landlord sniffed the air and said snow was on the way.
Right. I mean, everything about this is extreme ghost story. The edges of the moor? Nothing but ghosts are out there.
A fox was found at Piles Wood, and soon the hounds were streaking away up the rocky valley. They ran past.
This wasn't actually a fox that they had staked.
Yeah, pre-found.
Right.
This was a free range fox.
Sure. And again, I just have to say, why do you want that fox?
They ran past Ermy Pits, an open cast tin mine, and on the bogs of the Struggy, The fog on top of the moor.
Gotta love
Riders
Scotland.
The riders started peeling off for home, and by the time Poole reached Greenhill, he was alone in the mist with the occasional cry of hounds and the first flakes of the snow. He was about to turn back when a figure beckoned him to follow. He could not make him out in what was now a blizzard, but he could see that he was a little wiry figure riding a sharp-looking iron gray horse.
Whoa, cool.
As they climbed higher, the ground got worse, and Mr. Poole, who could not look into the driving snow, noticed they were on a faint path. The path undulated as we rode along, wrote Mr. Poole. He goes on, I know what this was, the infamous Black Lane. A man-made track across the wet green mosses which would swallow a horse. Few people rode Black Lane in good weather, certainly not a blizzard. I had not heard the hounds for some time, but was more concerned with survival, so I clung to my guide as he fitted through the murk. At last, we emerged from the bog on the slightly better ground in Swinecombe Heads. The misty figure held up his hand and we stopped. Sure enough, we could hear hounds coming to my left. We held on a trot, my horse being very tired now. Then suddenly we dropped below the cloud into the Swinecombe Valley. Just in time to see the hounds catch their fox by the moor gate. I knew that I was safe now. I just had to follow the track down from the gate. My guide had been beside me, and I turned to thank him, but he waved a hand and was swallowed up in the cloud.
Crazy. I half expected him to encounter like a dragon rider of Pern with some of those names.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, he kind of did.
I sort of did, yeah.
A little wiry figure riding a sharp-looking iron gray horse.
All right.
I mean, this sounds...
Later that day, Poole sat in a farmer's kitchen and called John and related the eerie encounter. John unhooked a picture from the wall of a little wiry man on an iron gray horse with a ratty tail. That's Lippity, the Romany huntsman. He died in a blizzard in Swinecombe Heads 50 years ago on Christmas Eve.
Oh, I was going to say it sounds more like a fae encounter than a ghost, but now we're getting the Dingo died 30 years ago wakeboarding.
I have so many more. I'll let you guys pick the next tale. But I have the Flying Hearse, the Ghost of Constable Tower.
Okay.
Colonel Sidney's Christmas Ride.
I want to hear about Constable Tower because it made me think of Hightower from Police Academy.
That is exactly what I thought too. It was a British Hightower.
All right, this one's not too long either.
The ghost.
He makes an ambulance noise, but it's like weird and backwards.
The ghost
is the only good cop amongst them.
The Ghost of Constable Tower. London has a Christmas ghost. Moreover, it is the ghost of a lady, and it has revisited the glimpses of the moon within the precincts of that gray and time-worn center of London's tragedy and London romance, the Tower. The date on this says Manchester Times as the source, 28th of December, 1900. On Christmas Eve, 1900, a poor officer lived in the Constable's Tower within the Tower of London and heard a long, drawn-out wail coming from the top of the tower. Since it was late, around 9 p.m., he decided to investigate in case someone was breaking into the castle. When he reached the stairs, he once again heard the wail, but it sounded closer. Suddenly, he heard distinct footsteps receding behind the arras, a wall hanging or tapestry.
Arras or something?
Arras? Yeah, anyway, behind the tapestry. In one of the rooms down the corridor. Oh, he heard this in one of the rooms down the corridor. In total, 3 times a sad, low, wailing cry trembled through the tower, and each time the soft footfall was heard retreating behind the tapestries hanging. The officer searched the whole tower several times, but found nothing. Days later, he met with Captain Jupe,
Captain Jerp Chop Choop Jope.
a former guard
the
at the
imaginary
constable.
policeman.
And he confirmed, the Captain Jupe confirmed that a similar strange activity was reported by previous officers based there.
Interesting.
Captain Jupe also claimed that several Chelsea pensioners, retired ex-military, witnessed the specter of a middle-aged gentleman of a long ago time with a peaked hat, pointed beard, a cloak, and sword over Christmas. That's what it says. It says, witnessed the specter of a middle-aged gentleman of a long ago time with a peaked hat, pointed beard, cloak, and sword over Christmas.
Okay.
Okay.
He's got his sword over Christmas. What's not to understand?
The ghost was seen walking with a dejected gait, his head sunk low and his hands to his chin. He was seen
why
near
so sad, Christmas ghost?
He was seen near the state apartments set aside as the governor's residence. And in the state apartments, there have been rumors and conjecture that it was haunted and said to have secret passages running to and from the precinct.
Okay, so now that was my first thought, was like, this sounds like some secret passagery to me. But there's nothing to say that a ghost couldn't use a secret passage.
Ghosts can use a secret passage.
Yeah.
They love a secret passage.
They love it. Nobody's in there. It's a secret.
But I'll go light this week and pass the skull off. But I have several more. The Haunting Returned.
Okay.
More about the author. The Rideless Horses of Copyhold Lane.
Nice.
The Missouri Wild Man.
Ooh. That one doesn't sound like a Christmas ghost story, I gotta say. That one sounds like Ted Nugent's coming to town or something.
But I got.
Yeah, that's the tale of Uncle Luke coming back from what we thought was death.
I got 28.
It's how he's just been on a bender for a decade.
Yeah.
I got 28 real ghost stories to share with y'all over December.
Very cool. Love it.
Bringing back the ghost tales for your Xmas.
Much love it.
Because the church ain't doing it.
Can I take
Rebirth.
the talking skull? Give me that skull.
Take the skull.
Yeah, take it.
I want the skull. I want the skull.
Skull it out.
So I love a cat. You guys like cats?
No, but
Big cat
it's me, not them.
fan.
Like, it's something about me, and the cats are like, what is this weird human?
Yeah.
I'm more of a Yusuf Islam fan than
Nice.
Cat Stevens.
That's a deep cut.
yeah.
I
I knew going into it was too far.
I specifically have been weirdly interested in cat shapeshifters recently, because I've heard a lot of stories of people seeing figures that then go behind like a fence or something and a cat walks out.
Sure.
And or just like figures that seem to take on the form of a cat. Shapeshifting into a cat seems to be a thing. So I started looking up legends about cats, and I found on Life's
You did a regular
Abundance.
Catwoman starring Halle Berry. You searched
Yes.
you searched cats on the Google.
I did. I on lifesabundance.com, I was actually looking for actual shape-shifting spells, and I found a pretty interesting one on Quora, but the more I sort of read into it, the more I sort of thought that maybe this person is just sick. So
Mhm.
I found another article
well, it's Chlora.
on lifesabundance.com that are the world's creepiest cat legends.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So first up, we're taking a little trip once again to the isle of my birth, and we're going to talk about Sith cats, or Kate Sith, if you'd like, a fairy creature from both Celtic and Scottish mythology. Sith cats were large black cats with a splash of white fur on the chest. While Sith cats were believed to be spectral in nature, they were inspired by actual creatures known as Kellis cats. A hybrid between wild cats and domestic cats found only in Scotland, which is amazing. That's such a funny and weird thing to do, to be like to breed your own wild cat and then be like, I don't know, must be a ghost. Some kind of ghost. Sith cats were believed to have wicked purposes, like most modern cats, really, including a desire to consume souls immediately after death.
They love it.
They love it. They lap it up. Every year on Samhain, houses made an offering of a saucer of milk outside, and these houses would be blessed by the being, while those that did not would suffer a curse. So on Halloween, you're supposed to...
they get that trick instead of the treat.
Yeah. On Halloween, you're supposed to leave out a saucer of milk for the Sith cat, or else. Honestly, this does feel like it could be kind of an origin to trick-or-treating, doesn't it?
It does. It has a lot of what we do now in terms of, you got to give the children candy or else you will be tricked.
Or else they'll eat your soul after you die.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a fun fact. The Scots believed that the cat Sith, which was actually a witch that had the ability to transform into a cat. That's what I'm talking about. But that the witch was limited to only, you guessed it, 9 transformations in a lifetime. Sound familiar?
It does. It does.
This is believed to be the origin of the belief that cats have 9 lives.
I was going to say cats can only have sex 9 times, but that makes more sense.
Yeah.
And then it breaks off. Next up, the Matago, or Matagot, if you're saying it in American. The Matagot. The Matago. First conceived in the oral traditions of southern France, the Matago, also referred to as Mandago, is a mischievous spirit. While it was capable of shape-shifting into a number of animals, such as a rat, a fox, a dog, or even a cow. Quick cow form.
They'll never suspect the cow.
Well, look, man, you're running from some people, and the only place to hide is a pasture. You're going to want that cow transform.
Fair. That is a pretty good instant cast. Its preferred form was that of the black cat. Matagos were considered evil in nature, but they could be trapped, whereupon it would take a largely beneficial role for its captor. So if you can catch one, it'll be basically your familiar. The legend states that if you lured one from its hiding spot with a serving of fresh, meaty chicken, and then scooped it up and walked straight home without looking behind you, it would become a source of dependable good fortune. There were a couple of catches, as there always are with magical beings.
Of course.
First, before every meal, you would have to feed the first mouthful of your food and the first sip of your drink to the Matago. If you managed to stick to that routine each morning, you would find a gold coin. Which I'm assuming is the poop from that first bite of food. Second,
I don't care how I get the gold.
What?
It doesn't say where you find it either, so it could just be like in your cereal.
Oh, yeah.
Just like,
underneath your fingernail. You have to
Yeah,
pry it
yeah.
out. It's horrible.
it's under your flesh somehow. You're coughing them up. Um, so you have to feed it the first bite and the first sip. Manage to stick to that routine. You get the gold coin every day. That's a lot. I mean, a gold coin nowadays, like a proper gold coin, like $200. Second, you would have to release the creature from its servitude well prior to your death. Otherwise, your last days on Earth would assuredly be agonizingly painful.
Boy, what a terrible alarm clock for your death, though. Like if your death is early, like
Yeah.
fate's decided you're going to get hit by a wagon today. The cat for 3 days, the cat's just tormenting you. You're coughing up
Tormenting you.
hairballs. Your
Clawing
birds
your
are driving you
flesh.
insane.
Yeah. Yikes. Okay. And then there's a really scary picture of a cat.
To really drive it home.
Yeah. Next up, this one we kind of know a little bit. The Bakeniko of Nabeshima.
Yeah,
The origin.
it's a lucky cat.
Well,
not
you'll see.
mistaken.
I think it's kind of a similar situation where it can be, but the Bakeneko also has pretty bad intentions. The origin of this terrifying legend is from 16th century Japan. One of the more frightening creatures, this cat not only sought to devour humans, but immediately afterwards would assume their victim's exact likeness. Whereupon they would attempt to deceive other humans, thus continuing a vicious cycle. So basically, this thing would eat you and then go home and be like, "Hey kids, I'm home. How about some tuna?" And they would all start eating tuna and like playing with a little feather on a string. And then the kid would be like, "Why are you acting so cat-like, father?" And then devoured.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Lucky.
Aside from their shape-shifting abilities, they were believed to wear strange hats for dancing. I think it's a napkin. I think weirdly
it is,
I
yeah. They put a
Yeah.
napkin on their head. If they don't have something else that'll fit in their cat form, they'll wear a napkin and do a dance.
You gotta have a little napkin for them. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you gotta have a little hat for it. If you're blowing it that bad, if your Bakeneko has to resort to using a napkin, come on, get on Etsy.
Yeah.
It's like 70% cat hats.
Well, we went on to Etsy before you got here, and we learned a lot about what you can buy on Etsy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Boy. There's nothing that you can't find in hentai.
God damn it. Aside from their shape-shifting abilities, they were believed to wear strange hats for dancing, perfectly imitate human speech, have the ability to place hexes on people, especially those who were known for their cruelty to cats, possession, and even a penchant for hiding in mountainous locales where they would tame and train wolves to assist them in attacking weary travelers far from home. So not lucky. You're thinking of a different cat.
I think I'm thinking of just the Neko cat, maybe the one
Okay.
that you see it with its paw up. It's usually
Yes.
a little
That little guy
gold or
who's
white,
doing this
like
this number.
yeah.
Yeah.
Those guys.
Okay, next up, a personal favorite. We're going back to the Americas to talk about the Wampus cat.
No womp.
Ooh.
We're talking about the Wampus cat. The Wampus cat, believed to originate among the Cherokee people, the mythical Wampus cat is a common staple of Appalachian folklore, a shapeshifter. Its most common manifestation was a large wild cat, but it could also take the shape of a beautiful woman, a real Bugs Bunny situation. Yoo-hoo! It was considered a ferocious creature capable of driving even the bravest of warriors to the brink of insanity. J.K. Rowling's fans may recognize this magical being as being vehemently anti-trans for some reason. I don't know why she put that into the book. It's not part of the folklore. No.
She specifically said that it can only transform into one gender, and that gender was decided at its birth.
Apparently in the Harry Potter books, they use Wumpus cat hair. Garrick Ollivander uses it in the creation of certain magic wands.
Oh, great. That's fascinating. I kind of wish I cared.
Yeah. Fun fact, the word cattywampus, which means out of alignment, but also fierce and destructive, arises from the myth of the wampus cat. Interesting. I had no idea. And I say cattywampus quite often. It's fun. It's a good one. It's all cattywampus. Okay. I got one more cat for y'all.
Okay.
Okay. This is the black cat of Killikee. Like all of the supernatural kitties, this Irish creature's origins began centuries ago. However, sightings have continued into modern times, which makes this arguably the most frightening. Like the tall tales that are common in the area, this one is attached to a particular great house, but we can assure you nothing like this ever happened on Downton Abbey. Lifesabundance.blog.com. Located in Dublin, the Killikee house was rumored to be haunted by a spectacularly creepy cat. Though technically it stalked the grounds, unlike other big cat sightings in the UK, the main difference is that this cat is supernatural. In 1968, a young couple bought the Killikee house and began much-needed renovations. Within days, workers started hearing strange noises and sensing things that, quite frankly, were decidedly spooky. Things came to a head when the workers were shocked by the sudden appearance of a towering black cat with eyes that glowed like a demon. Just as the renovators started freaking out, the specter vanished. Afterwards, the new owners listened politely to the story, but didn't put much stock in the tale. And then the creature appeared to each of the new owners in turn. The giant apparition appeared in every corner of the house, despite locked doors and windows, stalking the couple with its penetrating stare and toothy snarls. Very creepy. I'm imagining like a very large, kind of emaciated panther.
Yeah, that's kind of what I had in my mind as well.
The newlyweds sought help from the Catholic Church, who made it so much worse, whereupon an exorcism was performed on the estate. For a few months, everything was quiet, and the two believed that their nightmare was finally over. Sometime later, however, a group of actors visiting the estate held a seance, whereupon the devilish creature returned, bringing with it two frightening ghosts dressed in nun's garb. And thus the nightmare continues. Very weird.
I hate how it ends, and thus the nightmare continues.
I mean, apparently this just keeps happening. It's going on to this day. So if you'd like to see the Black Cat of Killikee, all you have to do is go to Killikee House in Dublin. Maybe you'll get to see a couple of nuns too. All right. Do you guys want to hear the shape-shifting spell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Not to
This
use
is
it
from
for anything
Quora.
corrupt either, but just to know, you know.
I gotta check it against my sources.
This is from Quora.com, and it is the answer to a question: what are some real spells to become a shapeshifter? This person says, subject can send electrical signals from his or her brain to the DNA cells in order to trigger the transformations. He is able to do this because he has programmable DNA. Subject can produce enzymes in the cells to break down the DNA, rearrange it, and combine it to look like anyone he comes into physical contact with. This way, subject could physically change gender, race, age, height, weight, eye color, hair texture, hair length, skin texture, body shape, muscle definition / size / shape, face shape, finger / toenail length. My toenails would be so long. Finger / toe length. My toes would be so long, etc. He can even copy the artificial features of a person, like dyed hair, missing limbs, facelifts, tattoos, etc. Enzymes and growth hormones, I'm sticking with hormones, are secreted throughout subject's body to help increase and decrease mass whenever subject pleases, to shape the body and the face to look like whoever they want. They can easily change the color and texture of the skin and hair, just like an octopus.
Ooh, they're getting really good now. Have you seen that one octopus that can become a human?
I haven't.
Oh yeah.
It does
Octoman?
John's face perfectly. It can become John.
A very potent morphine-like chemical is secreted throughout the body to prevent any pain or discomfort during the transformation. Subject can even use the method to change their gender. We already talked about this. By eliminating or adding some chromosomes, growth hormones, and enzymes. I mean, if only it were that easy, I'll bet a lot of people could save a lot of money.
This doesn't sound like a spell so much
really
as you
doesn't.
have to have been a government experiment in
Yeah.
the 1970s.
And it never really
this is some alien hybrid technology.
And it never really gets to the point where it's like, this is how you can turn into a cat. Which is why I stopped reading, because they kind of just go on like this. They're like, oh, you want to be a shape changer? Hormones.
Yeah, your brain just has to be wired to change your DNA that's already some sort of crazy super DNA that allows for your cells to transform.
They're not wrong. The Liver King went from just being a very large dentist, or dental salesman,
Hygienist?
to becoming the 8-abbed freak we know today through hormones.
Yes. Well, through steroids.
Which are horse hormones.
He turned himself into a flesh golem.
And all I'm saying is, if you want to become a golem or something, there are ways.
But this person seems to think that you can do it just by sitting there and thinking, cat, 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 which is not true, because I would have been a werewolf when I was 13.
Okay. Have you tried doing it with better mental clarity?
Yeah. I mean, I was never more clear than when I was 13. That was before I started the weed. I was jerking off every half hour on the half hour. I didn't have a beard, so it wasn't getting in my food and gumming up my insides. Guys, there's so much beard in me.
There's a lot of beard in all of us, really.
And you know it's getting into your brain.
Oh, that's where it starts. It's growing out of my brain.
That's where it comes from. So there you go. There's some spooky creepies about cats and kind of a nonsense thread about shape changing. I'm going to look up some more spells about shape changing because it fascinates me.
Share 'em.
I've seen a couple. I have some stuff I can send you.
Ooh, I mean, you've seen a couple shapes shifted?
No, I've seen a couple spells.
All right, chuck them my way. We'll do a deep dive.
Yeah, they're all in like weird medieval grimoires that I have.
Sure. Of course you do. What would be the first animal you'd change into?
Oh, you know what? I want to say something like bird because it's cool and you get to fly, but I'm afraid of heights, and I'm pretty sure that's going to contain, and no one wants an eagle that's afraid of heights. So
just clinging to a tree.
I think a bear or something.
Bear's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good one. I was gonna say super ripped kangaroo because I got some scores to settle.
Incredible answer. I'm gonna go. I'm going cat.
Yeah.
What type of cat?
Cat's a solid one.
I think just like a
big
black cat. You know what? I would go black cat with white splotch on the chest, just like that Scottish critter. Or maybe not. Maybe just all black. I want to leap on the rooftops. I want to catch birds and taste their blood. I want to know the secrets of the feline world.
Oh, Nate, get the gun.
Now, do you decide to keep it clean and use a butthole, or just shapeshift without one?
I mean, I think I got to have the butthole. That's a necessary feature. But I don't think I'm going to be doing much maintenance on it in cat mode. Oh, God. What a horrifying reality of turning into a cat. You're going to have to lick some butt. All right.
For health.
Here, catch this. It's the speaking skull.
Whoa.
Oh, don't drop it. For the love of God, don't drop it.
Oh, it was just hanging in the air there for a second, a little bit of juggling, but I got it down safe. All right, so let me blow into its left eye a little bit.
Nice.
Tune this thing up, clear the spit valve.
Breaker 19, we're coming through with our convoy. This here's going to be a bunch of stories put together from the road. I found myself a book called Trucker Ghost Stories and Other True Tales of Haunted Highways, Weird Encounters and Legends of the Road.
Boy, fucking howdy.
Weird encounters and toothy lot lizards.
This is a segment that we might come back to. I don't know. Some of these are good. Some of them are kind of boring, but most of it, we'll do it as long as there's good ones left. We'll call it Truck Around and Find Out.
Nice.
Okay.
This first one is pretty fun. Turnpike to the Twilight Zone. It was early. These are all first-hand accounts, by the way.
Incredible. My favorite.
So they're all signed off by the people at the end. These were collected. Actually, this is really fun, kind of. Where's the name of the guy? I can't find it. Doesn't matter. The forward, however, is really fun. This is the most like romantic, we're the only people that really know bullshit that I've read in a long time. So I do want to read it real quick. This is from Terry L. Aldershoff. I was asked once what makes a real truck driver. It takes a very special type of person to drive truck for a living. We're nomadic, like gypsies. This is fairly recent. He should know that word is a slur. Our home is where our truck driver is. Yes, this truck driver. We were here long before the interstate highway system was created. We have names like Gandalf, Iron Horse, Freeway, and Patches. We speak a language unique unto ourselves, and like the ancient mariners, we gather to share our stories. It is easy enough to recognize the real truck driver. We're the person sitting alone at the counter drinking coffee while everyone else is asleep in their beds. We're the lone set of headlights on the dark, winding two-lane, hauling a load that no one else would touch under conditions that would keep any sane driver safe at home. We're the one driver willing to go to some faceless little town in the middle of nowhere, somewhere the average driver will never see or even know the name of. We chase the northern lights as they flicker and dance across northern Minnesota and the plains of the Dakotas. We chase them unhampered into the wild expanses of Montana and Wyoming. As we pass in the middle of the night through places like Wounded Knee and Little Bighorn, we've seen the ghost riders and heard the screams of anguish from the spirits of the dead.
Listen, this man has a lot of words for doing trucker speed and smoking cigarettes.
I know.
But I do respect the trucking people. They make the world go round.
It's kind of amazing, even so. We run the back roads through the swamps and bayous of Louisiana and Mississippi. We travel on deserted roads where the glow of the full moon is dappled by Spanish moss that hangs heavy across the roadway from the branches of ancient sycamores. Damn. We've seen the bonfires that light up the night, and we have heard the chants and wailing songs from the undead.
Good Lord.
We have been to places with names like Old Salem and Jamestown, settlements that were founded 146 or more before the signing of the Declaration of Independence, settlements that burned witches at the stake. Alone in the darkest hours before dawn, as our headlights cut a path through the dense forest, we're the ones that are flagged down by these gossamer-clad apparitions.
Wow. As
we sit in a nearly empty diner perched on the edge of nowhere, we take a few minutes to talk to a lonely soldier and reminisce about a war that once raged a half a world away. We will remember that soldier's name, for had it not been for him and the time we shared, we would have been part of the fatal accident that occurred 60 miles up the road. It'll come as no surprise to us when, some 25 years later, we find that soldier's name inscribed on a black granite wall in Washington, D.C. We say a silent prayer, for, unlike us, he never made it home.
Nice.
That's
These
some
Or
are
good-
our,
not. My emotions are mixed.
I'm fucking there.
these are our stories. Stories told by real truck drivers and by their families and colleagues in the transportation world. Many of these stories have been handed down from father to son and then on again to our sons and daughters. You know how trucking is like a monarchy
Yeah.
where only one family holds the keys to,
Yes.
to the cab?
Yes.
Uh, they are our stories. We know and understand the tales of the road. If you meet us, you will be able to recognize us by what they call the 1,000-yard stare in our eyes.
Good Lord.
For we have seen so much more than you ever will. That's really talking down to people that don't drive trucks.
I thought he was talking about Nam.
Yeah, that
Might
too.
be. I've driven professionally for over 33 years and have traveled nearly 6 million miles behind the wheel of a semi-truck. I've hauled everything from artichokes to elephants in and through the contiguous 48 states, 3 provinces of Canada, and farther north, including the Yukon and Alaska. I am a real truck driver. The stories my colleagues and I share with you here are our stories, for we have lived them.
Okay.
That's the
Chun.
introduction to this book. Did. So here's one that's not from a trucker. This is just a guy who's driving, and I think he's young at the time. This is Turnpike to the Twilight Zone. It was early November of 1979. I just moved back to my home of Pittsburgh from the Colorado Rockies. On a gray Sunday afternoon, I was bored and restless and decided to catch a movie at the local theater about a mile or so away. I looked up at the sky as I got out of my car several blocks from the movie house. Overhead, the soggy graphite clouds were ready to burst. If it was raining when the show let out, I'd be sopping wet and freezing cold by the time I got back to my old station wagon. I didn't wear a jacket.
Brag.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Mr. Warmass over here.
A few hours later, as I left the theater, I saw a major cloudburst looming just seconds away in the dark, swirling skies above me. I made a dash for my car, jumped in and closed the door just as the rain fell in buckets and my wipers began to flap back and forth. In the deluge, they were all but a formality. I began to slow crawl home. Although I hadn't been in town for several years, I knew exactly where I was. Go down the street, make a left, follow a mile, and wait a second. I must have made a wrong turn in this crazy storm. I'm now heading down a long, steep road I've never seen before. I look for a place to turn around, but none appears. So I just keep going farther down this weird, winding road that looks like it's in the middle of the country, not the urban neighborhood I just left with its delis and chain pharmacies.
Oh, come on.
What? I love a deli.
And I love a chain pharmacy, baby. Get me my wall fed. Finally, I saw a turnoff 50 feet before me. I look at the sign. The name of the street wasn't familiar, but I calculated that it would take me back in the direction I wanted to go. Yet the farther I went down this road, the stranger I started to feel. Nothing seemed even remotely familiar in a way that's hard to describe. Every city has its own look and feel. LA simply doesn't look like Cincinnati. And this didn't look like Pittsburgh. I guess it's just an area I haven't been before. After 5 minutes of driving through Lord knows where, I banged the steering wheel and started to curse. But my anger was almost fake, more of a nervous reaction. I was not angry at being lost. I was secretly freaked out at I was lost. That's all it was. I was lost. At this point, I had the existential realization that when you're normally lost, you have some idea of where you are. The city, anyway. But right then, if I had the guts to admit it to myself, I would have had to say I am somewhere far, far away. The sun comes out. It's now a sparkling blue sky. I look up at the brilliant sun. Boy, that was quick. I drove for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30. Nothing looked even remotely familiar anymore. At that point, I was laughing and making half-insane crude remarks as road signs read names I knew were not from the area. Eucalyptus Avenue. Why, of course. Lots of frickin' eucalyptus in Pittsburgh. Now I know exactly where I am. By the ocean. Jesus H. Christ. This is insane. I mean, insane. Then Eureka. The sign for the turnpike. Oh, thank you, Almighty God in heaven. Thank you. I knew the Pennsylvania Turnpike like the back of my hand. To get home, all I needed to do was find exit 7, and no matter where in bleeding hell I was now, I'd be home in 15 minutes. Once I found exit 7. Thank you, exit 7, wherever you are. I pulled up to the on-ramp of the turnpike. That's interesting. There is no one in the toll booth. Empty.
Ooh.
I looked behind me. No cars. I was going to ask the attendant where I was, but sweet mother, I swore under my breath as I pulled up to the toll booth. But hey, no big deal. It's automated. That's why there was no one there. I took my ticket from the automated machine, drove onto the turnpike, and looked at the card. Where is exit 7? Not on the card. The names of the exit, the cities, what are these? Jamesburg? Where am I? Maryland? As I drove down,
Good joke.
as I drove down, I know, it's sick burn, man.
No, Maryland's real.
Oh, okay.
Oh, my bad.
As I drove down what I realize now is a brand new turnpike, I also noticed something else. There are no cars on it, not one going either way. Brand spanking new turnpike, completely empty for miles and miles. Then I realized, oh shit, I'm on a new turnpike that isn't meant for traffic yet. I drove for 10 minutes, miles and miles of 2-lane, perfectly paved, brand new empty turnpike. 15 minutes, still no cars. So now I realized I had to turn around. I know it's a huge find, but what else was I supposed to do? I find a crossover and make the U and start preparing my story to tell the toll booth guy, assuming he was just away on a pee break or something, and I'll be there when I get back. I looked out at the miles and miles of empty turnpike. Why are they building a brand new turnpike anyway? This must cost gazillions. We already have a turnpike, for Christ's sakes. Okay, here's the exit. Okay, prepare the story. But nope, nobody at the toll booth. In fact, the gate is up. I drive through. Oh, thank you. No $375 fine. Okay, now make a left or right. I made a left. And then only after a minute or so, there it is. A road I know. It shouldn't be here 30 minutes from where I started. But what the hell? I know this road. My relief almost brings me to tears. And that road took me home. How was the movie? My mother asked as I walked in the kitchen. Oh, it was okay. But man, you would not believe how lost I got. I didn't know they were building a new turnpike. I was on that thing for 20 minutes. Not one car. It was bizarre. My mother furrowed her brow. My dad smiled. What? Isn't there a new turnpike? I don't think so, my mother said. No, not that I've heard of, my dad said. They looked at me blankly, knowingly, like I just unwittingly admitted I'd been smoking some serious pot over the past few hours.
Nice. Son's got some kind, bud.
Hell yeah.
For days afterward, I asked around. Nope, no new turnpike. 15 years later, I was at a conference in Los Angeles where the speaker, Carlos Castaneda, electrified us with one of his outlandish tales of sorcery. One day, Taisha was driving, he says. We were driving down Alhambra when we looked around and suddenly, poof, we don't know where we are. We drove into another world. He smiles broadly, barely able to contain himself. I tell you, be careful when you drive down steep, winding roads like this one, he cautions. Apparently once a great river flowed down this road, but now, even though it has long since dried up, the great energy of the river still flows here and can take you away.
Oh, that's incredible.
Everyone in the audience giggles nervously at his silly story. I laughed too when something abruptly takes me back. I remember the steep winding road, the ghost turnpike, the shuddering realization of being lost in another world. From 50 feet away, Carlos turned from the crowd and imperceptibly pointed a finger at me, smiling. He knows, he said quietly, raising his eyebrows playfully.
Oh.
What? Carlos. Show me the way.
I continued to live in Pittsburgh and still do to this day, but it was many years before I had reason to be back in the neighborhood where the event first unfolded. Something about the area, the street, continued to impart a disturbing mood in me, as though I couldn't be anywhere near that theater without feeling I was standing on the high dive for the first time, looking down, knowing it was too late to turn back. Then one afternoon, a strange urge came over me, almost like I was hypnotized, and I found myself driving my car right to the corner of the avenue where I'd parked those many years ago. I casually looked over like I was at my 20-year reunion facing the bully who tormented me in high school, and I got a chill when I saw the name of the street. Forward Avenue. As though it truly is an otherworldly launch pad that thrusts you forward and out of this world into who knows where. R. Dustin Mercer.
It's freaking my bean, dude. Have you ever heard the stories about like people who will while driving down the street, all of a sudden see like a car that looks like nothing they've ever seen before?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they can't read the signs. They're in a
Yeah.
crazy alien language or something.
Yeah. Crazy. I'm gonna look into some of that because those are really interesting. They've even got names for the cars. It's like a Thompson Unilight. Very weird.
Let's do this one. The Red-Eyed Man on Wisconsin Highway A. Never in my life have I been more terrified than I was that night in 2002. I was driving east on Wisconsin's Highway A between Three Lakes and Sugar Camp. This highway was nothing out of the unusual. It was quiet, the speed limit was 55, and it had no history of hauntings. It was a cool and dark spring night. I don't know why he knows that it has no history of hauntings prior to experiencing one.
Listen, I've
he
researched
knows.
every haunting in the state, and this street's not one of them.
It was a cool and dark spring night, and the moon rose high. I was alone and just driving, thinking about things. The car radio was turned off. There's a stretch in the road that runs past an old building that served as a picnic house. The yard next to it had a park. I can't remember the last time I saw anyone there or any kids. I was distracted and a little stressed out. I was looking at the old picnic house when I saw a figure in the middle of the road. I couldn't really make out what it looked like at that point. It was a man, at least it looked human. I swerved out of the way the moment I saw him, hitting the brake hard. I was nearly thrown into a ditch, but came to an abrupt stop when I hit a tree, my car steaming, broken. I was mad. Who wouldn't be? I got out of the car limping. My head was bleeding. I walked toward the figure, swearing at him. What the hell are you doing standing in the middle of the road, man? I yelled. The man had his back to me. He was wearing a trench coat and turned around to face me. The man's face was every scary movie you've ever seen. His face was white, his eyes red, glowing like fire. The best way to put it is that I was alone on a highway with a man who almost killed me, who had no face and red eyes.
No face, huh?
Well, and then he says his face was inhuman.
Yikes.
So it had been human previously, maybe? It looked like it had been burned or like someone had thrown hot grease all over him. His face was so raw and frightening that I let out a scream of terror. The man opened his mouth and laughed like he heard a joke. His laugh was vibrant, blood-curdling. What was even more blood-curdling were the screams and moans he let out. I was beyond petrified. I ran, and he chased after me. Soon his voice got closer and closer to me, which meant that he had to be getting closer and closer to me. The sounds that were coming out of him now sounded like he was crying and screaming and moaning at the same time. It was so high-pitched and loud at one point that I had to cover my ears. I could feel the man's breath on the back of my neck. Then the man grabbed me by the back of my neck. I can't remember much after this. All I remember was seeing a light coming down the road and turning into two lights. I heard beeping, and then I fell down, while that terrifying scream echoed in the back of my head. I saw a figure coming up to me and heard them yell at someone to call an ambulance. I woke up in the hospital. My head and legs hurt. A nurse came up to me and said something that I couldn't hear. I just heard barely audible sounds and moans from somewhere. Then my parents came. I stayed another night in the hospital, and my hearing didn't come back for another 2 days. All I could think about was what I saw the night before, and I was still afraid. My hearing loss was obviously caused by whatever that creature was that kept crying and screaming into my ears. My parents told me that when they came to see me, I was white as snow. In the daytime, about a month later, I went back to the highway with my friend. We saw the remains of my car, which had been taken to the dump a couple of weeks earlier. We came to the spot where I'd encountered the red-eyed man and walked around a little bit. We went around the park and through the woods. My friend almost couldn't believe what I'd told him, but he did believe that something bad happened to me that night. Yeah, no shit, he was in the hospital for a couple days.
Something could still happen, though. We're dealing with the paranormal.
Running into a tree is bad enough. I don't know who the red-eyed man was, why he was chasing me, why he was screaming, why he had red eyes, why his face was all messed up, why he was in the middle of the road. I don't know anything. I just know that I don't drive on that highway at night anymore. That's by Logan Lee Brosh.
That's fucking terrifying. Okay. Is there a chance this was just a guy, who was a horribly disfigured guy
I mean, it
mental health issues, stuck in the street,
could
and
be.
then he disappeared, didn't he?
A lot of this is weird.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he did something fucked up to this dude's head,
Yeah,
and
heck,
then
he's
he
lucky.
collapsed, and someone saved him that didn't see a guy.
Wow.
Where do we know we're at a time?
Tool time.
time?
Excellent.
we
Well,
probably
I'll
got
time for
time
like
for
one
one
more
more,
if you
huh?
got one.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely do. This one is pretty great. This is UFO encounter in Wyoming, US Highway 26.
Fucking A.
In the mid 1970s, I was leased to a trucking company called International Transport out of Rochester, Minnesota. We had at the time a satellite terminal in Kalispell, Montana, where we'd load lumber out of if we were in that area. There were 3 trucks in the area when this happened. We spent the day loading and tarping our loads and headed for a small town outside of Indianapolis that evening. We all spent the night just north of Yellowstone National Park and headed out in the morning. It was early winter and the roads were virtually empty. We decided to angle across east out of Idaho Falls to save time and miles. In Wyoming, we picked up US Highway 26, which we would follow to Casper. We pulled into Shoshone. We're getting you can follow these trucks anywhere.
Fucking A.
Landmarks here. We pulled into Shoshone.
Lifeblood America.
Pulled into Shoshone around 8 p.m. that night. We ate and fueled, then headed east. It was a beautiful night, and the northern lights were out, dancing across the northern sky. This was during the time that there were reported cattle mutilations across the Dakotas, so that was one of the topics of conversation that night. Once you leave Shoshone, it's almost 300 miles to Casper, the most beautiful but desolate road you will ever see in your life. I can tell you it's not that beautiful.
Werewolf
Fucking
Radar's
nothing there.
unstamp of approval.
Shots fired.
CB radios were just coming into vogue, and it was a real treat if you had someone you could run with that had one too. The 3 of us had radios, and we decided to stay together so we would have someone to talk to. We stayed about 2 miles apart and spent the evening talking about one thing or another, mainly just pissing and moaning about the company and the loads. There was what looked to be a meteor shower that night. The sky was alive with lights and burning trails. With no city lights to obstruct the view, it was absolutely breathtaking. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning when the lead truck came on the radio telling whoever was behind him to quit screwing around and get rid of the high beams. Then a few minutes later, he was asking where we disappeared to. A few minutes after that, he'd say that he saw us again. It was a little confusing as we were at least 2 miles apart. I was in the middle, and I knew for a fact that I didn't see his trailer lights. The more he talked about the bright lights in his mirror, the more meteors there were in the sky. We started joking that he needed to keep his eyes on the road and not the night sky. He started getting really agitated, swearing at us, calling us names. Then he apparently sped up to get away from us because his signal was getting weaker. I asked him where he was going in such a hurry, and he told me he just wanted us. He told me he just wanted me off of his ass. His radio was getting scratchy and began to break up like he was pulling away from us and almost out of range. I sped up in order to keep him in radio range and told the truck behind me to do the same. We were flying along this empty road when it came to a set of hills. The third hill we came to had a really bright light just on the other side. But as we crested the top of the hill, the light went out. Before I realized it, I was less than 100 feet away from the back end of the truck in front of me. He was stopped right in the middle of the road with no lights on. I slammed on my brakes and told the truck behind me to do the same or he'd hit me too. I slid right past the stopped truck before I finally got stopped myself. The last truck pulled to the shoulder behind the truck in the middle of the road. As I got out of the truck, I could smell burning rubber and wood. It was hanging heavy in the cold night air. When I got beside the truck, the driver of the last truck was already standing there with his mouth hanging open, staring at the driver inside the cab. The truck was sitting lopsided. Every tire on that side was flat and still smoldering. His windshield was burned black and had exploded, as did the driver's door glass. His truck was dark green and school bus yellow, as were ours, company colors, but it was black now, at least one side of it was. The paint was blistered and peeling off at the door of the sleeper. His tarps had melted to the wood underneath, which was completely burnt through and still smoldering and smoking like it had been used as a giant bonfire, then put back.
Wow.
We opened the driver's door. Pardon me. We opened the driver's door to find the driver sitting there staring out the windshield like he was dead. His left sleeve was burnt crisp and stuck to his arm, which was also burned almost black. His face was burnt on the left side, and his hair was completely gone. He was bleeding out the cracks of his skin, and he was having trouble breathing. We spent about an hour getting him out of his truck and into mine, and his truck and out of the middle of the road. The trip to the hospital was nearly 2 hours, and he spent the whole trip talking about the bright lights, asking me if I'd seen them. I told him I hadn't, just the lights in the sky. He grabbed my arm at one point and started screaming that they tried to get him out of his truck, but he wouldn't let them take him. The lights had forced him to stop his truck, and then in a matter of seconds, they were trying to pry open his door. He said he locked it and pulled as hard as he could to keep it shut, but it kept opening in spite of his efforts. There were dozens of tiny lights hovering and maneuvering around the truck, 4 or 5 larger stationary lights, and at the end there was one huge blinding light, which must have been the light I saw over the horizon. He said there were half a dozen of these things walking around his truck, touching it, shaking it, and trying to get inside.
Oh,
They were tall enough to look inside the window of a cab over truck while still standing on the ground. I only come to just below the middle of the door, and I'm 6'2". At the hospital, they sedated him when they admitted him. I didn't see him again for almost 3 months, but they towed his truck into Rochester, where it sat in the corner of the yard for almost 2 years. He suffered 2nd and 3rd degree burns over 25% of his left side of his body and lost the sight in his left eye.
Wow. Fuck.
I personally have never seen a UFO, but to this day, I will swear that my friend has.
Dude.
That's another one from Terry L. Aldershoff.
That's insane.
Romany of the American Road.
Dude, intense. That's fucked up. That poor guy.
lost an eye.
Yeah.
I've never heard anything like that. That's like, I mean,
they and it doesn't sound like most of it doesn't sound like grays. They're 8 or 9 feet tall, maybe.
yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of tiny little like satellite UFOs hanging around. I mean, maybe they're like drones or something.
I don't know what's going on there. That's very strange.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
As you say every week, Jordan, keep looking towards the skis.
Keep watching the
Yes.
skis. Wow. Very
You never
strange.
know when you might be burned half to death by fresh pow pow.
Truly crazy. Wow. Well, that poor guy, hopefully if you've experienced something similar, you came out of it with most of your mind and some of your vision intact. Thank you for listening to this particular episode of Werewolf Radar. Kind of a scary one, not gonna lie.
Yeah,
I had ghost stories
mostly,
up front. We ended
mostly
scary.
spooky stories.
Yeah. And
Jordan, you in the
kitty.
middle was nice and fun and
That's
cuddly.
the kitty cats, right? Except for that tall, gangly one. That one creeped me out. If you enjoyed listening to the episode today, please give us 5 stars on iTunes or Spotify or any of that shit. Some places we don't have any stars. Can you imagine? If you give us
That's insane.
stars, it's free and it helps other people find the podcast. And then there will be more of us for when the dark tide inevitably washes over this world and we need to form an army to retake Universe A. If you really, really like what we do, you can go over to patreon.com/werewolf radar and you can sign up to become a Patreon member. A patron? A patron. Well, we call them Dark Council members. You too can join the Dark Council and come hang out with us while we record episodes. You get merch, you get fiction, you get freaking an additional episode of Werewolf Radar every week that we call the Grave Nugget. And boy, we got a good one going already. Nate is teaching us about some pretty wild shit over there, but we're not allowed to talk about it outside of the Grave Nugget. That is the only rule of being a Dark Council member. Tell no one what transpired here. Shout out to Chuck from Snappy Little Numbers for our intro and outro song. And come check us out on twitch.tv/werewolf_radar, where on Mondays we can be found playing TTRPGs like D&D 5e. Sometimes we play Duster. Sometimes we play Vermintide 3 and Smash Rats. Sometimes we play that one where I have to put on my VR headset and scare the shit out of myself.
Phasmophobia.
Boy, that game keeps getting bigger, keeps getting
Yeah.
scarier.
Yeah, it certainly does.
Yeah. So
Hey, we found a new way to give a heart attack.
Twitter Instagram, all of that shit. WerewolfRadar.com. Dang, we're all over the place. If you're having a hard time finding Werewolf Radar, then you ain't looking hard enough because it's really easy.
It's easy.
Although we
It's
are
getting
heavily
easier and
camouflaged.
easier. I
Getting
changed our
easier and
name.
easier.
I changed our podcast name to Werewolf Radar Paranormal Comedy Podcast.
Ooh,
And now
nice.
we come up in searches.
Oh, hell yeah.
Excellent.
Fuck yeah.
So no, become a
Something
Dark
else.
Council member. Your money's going towards a good place. The boys.
Yeah, the boys. We're spending it on making the podcast ever better. And hopefully someday we're going to install a Werewolf Radar button in every home in America that you can just press and contact us directly. Or it'll just play a random episode. We'll see what we can get. We got the boys working on it. And by boys, I mean the homunculi.
Yeah, we have a group of gremlins
That
that we dug out of the Arctic Circle.
maintain and bust the radar from time to time. Until next time, folks, thank you so much for listening once again. Y'all are the best. Keep watching the skis. And on the count of 3, our super secret sign-off line. This one isn't so secret. You can tell people about this one. 1,
Do it.
2, 3. Punch
Punch
the
the sky!
sky!
Spaceman Joe.
Joe.
Spaceman Joe.